North Carolina's Constitution favors free enterprise and opposes monopolies, making it well past time to end our government monopoly on liquor. That is the conclusion of a new policy report from the Locke Foundation's Jon Sanders. He is Director of Regulatory Studies. Jon joins us now with a look at why and how North Carolina can and should modernize its liquor industry, helping to liberate consumers and distillers from government control. Jon, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Donna. Thanks for having me.
Give us a sense of how North Carolina deals with liquor versus how a lot of other states do.
So North Carolina is a control state with regard to liquor, which means that all aspects of liquor sales are controlled at the government level. The state has a warehouse that has a commission that decides which liquor products can be sold, a warehouse that stores them, and individual government-owned stores that provide retail sales to customers.
So government involved at every single point along the process of distribution and sale of liquor.
Yes, and about 2/3 of the states are licensed states, which is pretty much how we do beer and wine sales in North Carolina, where a provider or a retailer is licensed to give those things out to provide them to consumers. But government is not controlling it the way that it is liquor.
That is so curious, Jon. Why would North Carolina deal with liquor one way and beer and wine another way? There must be some sort of history to that.
I think the history is there's the idea that liquor is more dangerous than beer and wine. And so after Prohibition, where all alcohol was outlawed, when Prohibition came to a conclusion and North Carolina had to decide what are we going to do, how are we going to regulate it, and other states are making their decisions, this is what North Carolina chose to do.
Now, based on all the different points at which government is involved here in North Carolina, that tells me there's got to be all sorts of bureaucracy tied to this as well.
It is very steeped in bureaucracy, and what makes North Carolina even unique among control states is that we have local government control of the retail. The individual ABC boards are local government boards, and the stores are owned by those boards.
So those ABC stores that we see around North Carolina, there's actually a group of people, a board, that controls what happens there.
Yes.
You know, I come from Arizona, and when I first moved to North Carolina, I had no clue what an ABC store was. To be completely honest with you, I thought it was like, Harris Teeter or Food Lion. I thought it was just something called ABC. And then I had to learn how liquor was distributed here, so it was very unusual to me. So why should we then modernize? Because here's the argument that we hear, Jon, whenever we talk about this, and you've been writing and analyzing this for years, urging North Carolina to get the government out of this. But those who support the control effort say, look, if you try to modernize and get government out, some bad things are going to happen. What do you say to them?
Well, it's sort of a circular argument that I run into. The government created this monopoly for itself, and the state constitution says that monopolies should not be allowed. So the government creates this monopoly because they're trying to protect people from receiving too much liquor. So they want to control the sales of liquor. Well, in doing so, they found out that they're creating a really nice revenue stream for themselves. So whenever you go after liquor, it depends on who you're talking to. They say, oh, well, what are we going to do about replacing revenue, or what are we going to do about keeping people away from liquor? And it tends to, I see the argument kind of go back and forth. If you answer one side of it, they go back for the other.
Let's talk a little bit more about each of those. So the concern, and certainly no one, no matter what your view about government's role in liquor is, no one wants over-drinking, binge-drinking, anything like that. So is there any research as to how the way a state handles liquor, does it impact how much people drink?
Yeah, research pretty much finds that it doesn't matter the kind of control. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because really the only thing that we're controlling is sales of bottles of liquor. I mean, people have access at much greater times throughout the day to beer, wine, liquor by the drink at their favorite restaurant or bar or sporting establishment. So essentially what the ABC store limits are purchasing bottles of liquor. So that's a very small amount of alcohol that's consumed in the state.
John, what about the idea that, well, if you change this, then you've got all sorts of people who might lose their jobs, or a city government or a county government is going to lose money that's necessary to provide public service? They're counting on that. That's what the defenders of the control system also say.
Well, if they are private sales of liquor, if they're private establishments, they're going to have to hire somebody. And so they might as well be hiring the people that have institutional knowledge of those retailers, of those distillers. So I don't see that to be as big of a concern. The biggest concern is how do you replace the local revenues? And that will have to be done by a series or decisions on excise taxes or some other funding level. But even that can be handled. The other taxes and the other state revenues are already built into the state statutes and don't depend on whether it's a control or a licensed state.
John, in fact, in the report that you wrote, which is available at johnlocke.org, you actually take a look at some other states and how they've handled things and how they've dealt with the same types of issues. And it's very interesting what has occurred in other states. Is there another state that is a model for North Carolina to follow, or is this kind of all over the map as to what the individual state experiences really are?
Yeah, it's all over the map. That's what makes it so difficult in writing about this, is you can't point to one state and say, gosh, we really should be like that. A lot of times you can point to one state and say, well, in this area, this is probably the more free state to model after, but then they get something else wrong, at least from a liberty perspective. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a legal product that we're talking about. It's not some sort of, outlawed product.
Who would benefit if North Carolina moves forward with modernizing and leaving the control model behind?
I think local distillers would benefit. I think consumers would benefit. I think communities would benefit.
How so?
Well, for the communities, you would have more retailers being able to provide, so you would have potentially more jobs. You would have more distillers, I believe, being able to come about, and they lead to a sort of community pride. They can bring in different people coming in to check them out. Those are neat places, just like the craft beer revolution that we've seen in North Carolina. I think craft distilleries are ready for that kind of growth.
And how would consumers benefit?
Well, consumers would benefit because they would have more options, and they wouldn't have to travel so far, and to find, especially in some places, they wouldn't have to travel so far in order to find the liquor products that they want, and they wouldn't see their choices limited by the ABC Commission or their prices set by the ABC Commission.
John, is there an appetite to move forward on a modernization within the General Assembly? Because certainly they would have to be involved in this.
There seems to be an appetite this year. This seems to be one of those years where people are willing to step back and look at it and really rethink it. I don't know what's going to come of it, but it's been a really good movement and a really good conversation that we're having in the state this year.